Hi guys. Today we're going to analyze a company. So, a bit about me. My name is Karthik and I'm a third year economics student. So, today we're going to analyze this company and I'm going to use English and Hindi both. So, the name of the company is Manorama Industries. So, its market cap is right now around 4500 crores. So, it's a small cap company. Anything below 10,000 crores, I consider it a small cap. So I've made a research report and we're going to go through it and we're going to see कि what is the product, क्या product बनाते हैं ये company बनाती है and product की demand क्यों बढ़ रही है and how has the company performed relative to its peers. We'll go over some key metrics, and then we'll see how this goes. So let's start. So this is the research report that I have made. So we'll start with the company overview. So Manorama Industries was founded in 2005. So this company was initially listed, I think in 2018 or 19 on the BSE SME platform. Last year, I think transfer होके this got listed on the main platform of NSE and BSE. So this company, ठीक है? So it is a leading producer of specialty fats and butters from tree-borne and plant-based seeds. So we'll see कि, what is their product, ठीक है? What do you mean by specialty fats and butters from tree-borne and plant-based seeds? So company's 80% revenue comes from chocolate, food, and confectionery industry, and 20% from cosmetic industry. So in this report, we are going to primarily focus कि कंपनी का जो प्रोडक्ट है उसकी डिमांड चॉकलेट इंडस्ट्री से आ रही है एंड वी गोइंग टू मेनली फोकस ऑन द चॉकलेट इंडस्ट्री ठीक है सो इट इज number one Indian exporter of sal and mango based specialty fats and butters. So, as far as my knowledge, there is no other company in the listed domain that makes this kind of a product. So yeah, maybe there going to be some private players, but public listed companies, I don't think there is any other company that's making this product. So 44% of their revenue comes from domestic market and 56% comes from international market. The major raw material used are shea nuts, sal seeds, mango kernel. So shea nuts, so Manorama, and these are imported from Africa. So Manorama Industries has a subsidiary in Africa, and from there these guys source their raw materials like shea nuts. So Manorama generates majority of its sales from shea nut based products and sal seed based products. Okay, so let's go further. So in order to understand, how does their product work, these specialty fats and all. So for that we need to understand, the science of chocolate. कि chocolate बनती कैसे है उसकी chemistry क्या है what are the key ingredients that go in making chocolate and we'll look at cocoa butter which is one of the key ingredients when it comes to producing good quality chocolate. Now what do I mean with good quality chocolate is that you know यहाँ इंडिया में there are these relatively cheap chocolates like Kit Kat or Five Star and these kinds of chocolates, so they don't have a lot of cocoa butter in it. So basically cocoa butter is the key ingredient here. So but when you go to slightly expensive chocolates uh, like Lindt, Ferrero Rocher and all, then there the cocoa butter is used in making them. Then we look at firstly how is chocolate made, the science behind chocolate. Then we look at cocoa butter and then CBAs. CBAs are cocoa butter alternatives. All so yeah. So let's go. So first we'll start with what is chocolate made of. So on the right hand side, look at this image. So this is a cacao pod. ठीक है, ये cacao tree का fruit होता है, ठीक है, like ये उस पे उगता है. And you know this white stuff, ये अंदर जो white stuff है, this is the basically the main fruit, ठीक है, that we are using to make chocolate. So cacao, and we're going to use the word cocoa and cacao interchangeably, ठीक है. So cocoa pods are the fruits of cocoa tree, like I said, ठीक है. Cocoa beans are the dried and fermented seeds of the fruit which are white. So this white stuff, ठीक है, it's dried and it's fermented, and then we obtain the internal part of this fruit. So cocoa pods are produced in tropical zones around the equator where climate conditions are well suited for growing cocoa trees. This is because these pods need very hot and humid environment to grow. So if you look at cocoa as a crop, ठीक है, so ये जो crop है, it's a very concentrated crop because it needs certain climate conditions to grow, and easily कहीं पे भी उग नहीं सकता है. So, it's very concentrated. We are going to look at this table right here, to get specific data, कहाँ कहाँ ये crop उगता है. So, about 70% of world's cocoa beans come from four West African countries: Ivory Coast, Ghana, Nigeria, and Cameroon. So Ivory Coast and Ghana are by far the two largest producers of cocoa, accounting for more than 50% of the world's cocoa. So this is, there is so much concentration when it comes to the supply of this crop. So you can see in this table, I have mentioned, from where I have taken this data from. Okay, you can directly go to the source. So you can see कि Ivory Coast produces 50.8% cocoa. This is this year का data 2022 से 2023. So Ghana 17.1. ठीक है, there are other countries also, Brazil, which produces 5%, but nothing compared to these Western African countries. So you know we can, and one thing about these countries is कि, all the cocoa that is produced in these countries is exported. Like उनके पास कुछ भी internal consumption के लिए नहीं है. It is a cash crop, and whatever is produced, it is just exported. Like I think 95 or 99% is exported. So let's go further. So after cocoa beans are processed, we obtain cocoa nibs. So processed matlab, this whole drying and fermenting process के बाद we get this cocoa nib. It is the edible part that eventually becomes chocolate. So this internal ऊपर का, this shell ये हटा दिया, तो this internal part, this becomes the chocolate. The main components in these nibs are cocoa butter and cocoa solid. Cocoa butter is a vegetable fat. ठीक है, so like I said कि cocoa butter is, it is a key ingredient in making good quality chocolate. Good quality like what, Lind की chocolate हो गई, ठीक है. So why cocoa butter is such an essential key ingredient when it comes to good high quality chocolate is because it gives certain characteristics to the chocolate that without it, वो characteristics आएंगे ही नहीं, ठीक है. Like कैसे कि it helps create a smooth texture, a solid shape, a melt in your mouth quality. This critical ingredient is chocolate's most expensive ingredient. Like जैसे मैं अगर ये वाली इसकी property explain करूँ, melt in your mouth quality. So what does this mean exactly? So cocoa butter stays solid at room temperature and it melts at body temperature. That is why a good quality chocolate stays solid at room temperature, but once we take a bite, जैसे ही हमारे माउथ में वो एंटर करती है, ठीक है, it starts melting. तो that is because the cocoa butter, it melts at body temperature. That's why we get that melt in your mouth quality. So the unique properties of chocolate come from the cocoa butter. CB solid, like I said, at room temperature, but it melts at body temperature. That is why when we eat chocolate, it melts in our mouth. So in this table, I have, shown कि, typically, जैसे dark chocolate हो गई, milk chocolate हो गई, white chocolate हो गई. So what are the key ingredients that go into making this chocolate? Okay, so you can go over it. So now we'll understand, how cocoa butter and cocoa powder, which are the two products that we get from these processing of cocoa beans. Okay, how are they extracted? Okay, so we will quickly go over, how we get these the cocoa butter and cocoa powder. So obviously, the raw cocoa beans, they have usually contain some impurities such as dirt, sand, leaves, and so on. For the safety of food production and processing, quality of cocoa butter and cocoa powder and cocoa butter, the first step of the treatment is carried out with a cocoa cleaning and stone removing machine. So they're going to clean it first, etc. Next step is fermentation and drying, which we saw. After this fermentation drying, we get the cocoa nibs. So let's start with stage one, pre-treatment of cocoa bean. So first step is roasting cocoa beans. So first we'll roast the cocoa beans, then we'll start peeling and crushing the cocoa beans. So peeling and crushing cocoa beans transforms them into cocoa nibs. Nibs is that internal part that later on becomes chocolate, the raw ingredient for chocolate. These nibs, while bitter, serve as the base for chocolate production. Grinding cocoa nibs. Then the third step is grinding cocoa nibs. Creates a flowing paste. मतलब उनको grind किया, then we are getting a flowing paste known as cocoa mass, which solidifies into a hard block called cocoa liquor upon cooling. So we are grinding it. ठीक है, we took the beans, first उनको हमने roast किया, then हमने उनको peel किया and crush किया, फिर उनको grind किया तो हमें उससे एक paste मिला. उस paste को हमने जब solidify कर दिया तो हमें कोको लिकर मिल गया. कोको लिकर जैसे ही ऑब्टेन हो जाता है, वील मूव ऑन टू स्टेज टू. ठीक है, स्टेज टू इज मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कोको बटर. सो हमें इस कोको लिकर से ही ये दोनों प्रोडक्ट्स मिलते हैं, विच इज कोको बटर एंड कोको पाउडर. So after we have obtained the liquor, ठीक है, so the next step is pressing cocoa liquor in a cocoa butter press machine. ठीक है, so this extracts cocoa oil. ठीक है, when this oil, the filtration of cocoa oil removes residues, ensuring its purity. So when you obtain this oil and उसको और आगे process वगैरह कर दिया etc. So cooling the cocoa oil solidifies into cocoa butter. So हमें cocoa butter मिल गया उस cocoa oil को extract करके, and this is the ingredient. This is the the key ingredient which goes into the good quality chocolate. सो देन स्टेज थ्री कम्स. तो एक बार हमें कोको बटर मिल गया है, ठीक है, हमें ऑयल मिल गया, ठीक है, तो जो उसका रेजिड्यू मिल जाएगा, व्हेन दैट रेजिड्यू goes into further processing, then it becomes cocoa powder. So let's read it. Stage 3 is manufacturing cocoa powder. So following the extraction of cocoa butter from cocoa liquor, the residual mass known as cocoa cake undergoes coarse crushing into powder due to its substantial volume. In the next step of fine crushing, cocoa cake undergoes further pulverization to yield finer cocoa powder, enhancing its quality. So our main focus is this guy, cocoa butter. So हमें पता लग गया कि how we obtain cocoa butter from cocoa beans, raw cocoa beans. ठीक है. So now we'll go deeper कि how what is the chemistry behind cocoa butter. Okay, so we're going to understand its properties and chemistry, and why is it, I'll tell you why it is essential to understand the chemistry of cocoa butter. So in order to understand why the company we are analyzing, okay, Manorama Industries, why their product works is, okay, so in order to understand that properly, we need to understand the chemistry behind cocoa butter. So we'll start. So properties of cocoa butter. So look at this image on your right. So the image on right is of a chemical structure called triglyceride. So why the name triglyceride? What does it even mean? So tri basically means three. So why we are using the name triglyceride is because there are three fatty acids here. First one is this palmic, second one is oleic, and third one is stearic. All three of these fatty acids are attached to this glycerine backbone. Okay, that is why the name is given triglyceride. So those zigzag lines, these zigzag lines are called fatty acids, and they are attached. They are attached to a glycerine structure, also called as glycerol backbone. So this is the glycerol backbone, and these three fatty acids are attached to this glycerol backbone. So yeah, so when these three fatty acids are attached to the backbone, it's simply called a glyceride. And since there are three fatty acids attached, it is a triglyceride. शॉर्ट फॉर्म है टैग्स. सो ये जो ट्राइग्लिसराइड है, दिस केमिकल स्ट्रक्चर, दिस मॉलिक्यूल, ठीक है, द मेन कंस्टिट्यूएंट ऑफ कोको बटर इज द ट्राइग्लिसराइड 97%, ऑलमोस्ट 100%. ठीक है. सो almost 100% of cocoa butter is made up of primarily these three fatty acids. You can look at this table, which is oleic, stearic and palmitic acid. So we can see कि oleic acid, typical fatty acid composition in CBE, which is cocoa butter, उसमें 34.5% oleic acid होता है, and then their melting point is given here. So now you need to understand कि cocoa butter is will is not made up of just one type of triglyceride. So cocoa butter is not one fixed triglyceride. So what do we mean by कि it's not one fixed triglyceride? कि like this is one example of a possible triglyceride that we will see in cocoa butter. So in this triglyceride we see कि first सबसे ऊपर the fatty acid is palmitic acid. Second में it is oleic acid. Then third is stearic acid. So we will call this triglyceride as POS, and order matters. सबसे टॉप पे palmitic acid है, सेकंड पे oleic है, थर्ड पे stearic है. So the picture shows one possible triglyceride in cocoa butter made up of palmitic, oleic and stearic in order. The order matters. Cocoa butter is a mixture of different tags or triglycerides. So mixture कैसे है? Mostly there are PSO. So you will see कि there are number of triglycerides in cocoa butter which have an order of PSO, which means first acid, सबसे top पे the fatty acid will be palmitic, second पे it will be stearic instead of oleic like in this picture, and third will be oleic. So, or it can be POP, which means there is palmitic, oleic, and again palmitic. There is no stearic acid. And POS, which is this picture. So, the point is, most of them have similar shapes. So, all these different odd types of triglycerides, primarily uh, made up of, mostly made up of oleic, stearic, and palmitic acid, just in different orders. Okay? They have similar shapes and chemical structures. Each fatty acid has a different melting point, and each combination uh, of these tags, ठीक है, has a different melting point. The proportion of these tags causes each cocoa butter to have different melting point. So we can see, 39% POS है, which is this particular triglyceride, which has palmitic first में सबसे ऊपर, then there is oleic, then third में there is stearic, then there is SOS, POP. This is a typical composition of triglyceride in cocoa butter. This is the source from which I got this data. You can check it out. So आगे चलते हैं. So now this is something interesting that I found where while I was researching about cocoa butter. So this is interesting. So we'll go over it. So wherever we source, so when we are sourcing cocoa butter, so geography also plays a part in its chemistry. So you'll see ki, let's go over it ki geographical origin of cocoa butter. Like if you're sourcing from Western African countries, or from, let's say, we looked at Brazil, say you get like 5-6% of cocoa butter or cocoa beans ki supply. So geographical origin of cocoa butter plays a significant role in determining the composition of different types of triglycerides it is made up of. Factors such as soil type and environmental conditions contribute to differing proportions of tags found in CB from different regions. So I'll explain this. So, like, let's say we are sourcing our cocoa butter from Brazil. So we'll take a look at this particular triglyceride, which is SOS. SOS, what does it mean? Ki there is a the stearic acid is on top, then there is oleic, and then there is again stearic acid. Okay. So so in Brazil's cocoa butter, okay, what these guys found, and you can look at this is the research paper that I was reading. So what these guys found in Brazil's cocoa butter, SOS triglyceride, there is 63.7%. When they looked at Ghana ka cocoa butter, there was 76.8, and Malaysia mein 84%. So there is a slight difference in chemistry of cocoa butter. Interesting thing. So now we look at crystal structures of cocoa butter. So, chocolate makers spend significant time studying about the crystal structures of cocoa butter because it makes a big difference between a chocolate bar that easily melts in your hand or a firm one that snaps when you bite it. So, cocoa butter, so basically these triglyceride, these tags, so fatty acids, okay, they make up the tags or triglycerides. And when these triglycerides they come together, they form crystals basically. So we know that cocoa butter is made up of triglycerides. Now these molecules packed together form a crystal. There are many different ways in which these molecules can pack together and form crystals. There are six main crystal structures of cocoa butter, or there are six different ways in which triglyceride molecules tend can pack together and form cocoa butter. तो ये 6 तरीके के फॉर्म्स ले सकता है कोको बटर, क्रिस्टल्स बन सकते हैं ट्राइग्लिसराइड से. सो फर्स्ट इज फॉर्मलेस क्रिस्टल्स. ठीक है. सो देयर इज टाइप 1, टाइप 2, टाइप 3, टाइप 4, टाइप 5. ठीक है. So because of this nature we say that cocoa butter is polymorphic in nature, which means it exists in multiple crystal structures. And I'll tell you why this matters. So you look at this table right here. I've I've mentioned कि crystal form क्या है, and different crystal forms जब होते हैं cocoa butter के, then there is a difference in melting point and properties में भी difference है. So these different phases affect the look, shine, texture, snap, setting time, and mouthfeel of chocolate. So the goal of chocolate makers ideally is to reach this form, which is type 5. And I'll get key, why this type 5, why do they aim for this type 5 crystal form. So the phases also result in unique melting points of chocolate depending on how chocolate is manipulated, temperature being a major factor. The cocoa butter crystals can arrange themselves in different phases. So as we go from phase 1 to phase 6, molecules are more tightly packed. This basically means that phase 1 has the lowest melting point and phase 6 has the highest melting point. The reason for this is more tightly packed molecules, we need more energy to pull them apart and therefore higher melting point. So अब type 5 क्यों चाहिए boss? So you look at the melting point of type 5 crystals. It is 34 degrees or 94 degrees Fahrenheit. So, you know, 34 degrees is close to your body temperature. Okay. So so when there is type 5 um, form, so we get a shiny firm with a snap melt in mouth feel. So that is why you want a good quality chocolate to use stay solid at room temperature but melt at body temperature. So that is why type 5 is why these chocolate makers they aim for the type 5 crystal form, because the melting temperature there is 34 degrees Celsius. So yeah, this explains why type 5 for a great chocolate bar, type 5 works the best. Looking at the table, the type of chocolate stays this type of chocolate stays solid until it reaches 34 degrees, then it melts. So, and more properties of this type 5 crystal form is that providing not only a delightful taste but also featuring a shine, gloss finish, proper texture, good snap, a specific melting point for a satisfying mouthfeel, resistance to blooming, and good contraction for molding. So now we understand why for a good quality chocolate, cocoa butter is such an essential key ingredient. Like, so many qualities of chocolate are coming from just one key ingredient, that is cocoa butter. So now we'll go to the next slide, which is exploring cocoa butter alternatives. So before I go here, so I want to, you know, look why do we need cocoa butter alternatives? Like, you know, cocoa butter, like natural cocoa butter is such a it's such an essential key ingredient. So, why there is a need for alternatives. So before we go here, I want to, you know, Shoki, what has happened to cocoa. So cocoa is basically a traded commodity. So let's go to, its price chart and look at, what has happened to cocoa, cocoa futures के price को. So right now, if you look at the commodity is trading, this commodity is trading at $6,952. So let's go at a long-term chart. We'll go to a monthly chart, and you can see, look at this enormous rise here. So let's go back. कहाँ तक है हमारे पास data? So we have data from 1980s till 2024. What 44 years of data? So we see कि for most, for good 40 years, this commodity was trading at what, $3,200 on the top side, and last 10 years, if you look at $2,000 on the downside, or the low was, I don't know, somewhere around $1,000. So let's put a horizontal line to see this more clearly. So let's say this was the range, ठीक है? So ये last 10-12 साल जितने भी. So now something happened, in late 2023 and starting of 2024, कि the price of this crop, this commodity, it went up exponentially. As a chocolate maker, when cocoa butter is such a key ingredient to your product, and seeing the price of a raw material, a commodity, go to let's see, start साल के starting से this went up almost 250%, almost touching $12,000. So that is an enormous rise in the price of cocoa futures. You know, agar you are a company, you're a chocolate producer, and in a matter of what, 4 months. So this is from January to April. So in a matter of 4 months, the price of your key raw material goes up 250%. That is a big concern. So if price of your raw material increases like this, you're going to eventually it is going to hit your gross margins, it is going to hit your profits, etc. So now we'll go back to the slide and you're going to understand these alternatives. So although cocoa butter possesses ideal characteristics which we looked at, like melt in mouth feel, shiny, glossy, etc. So to create great chocolate, the volatile price of cocoa butter along with specific climate conditions, cocoa trees need to grow, they like consistent temperature, the crop, nitrogen rich soil and shelter from wind have led to food industries seek alternatives for this essential chocolate ingredient. So this cocoa butter, ठीक है, can be substituted with other vegetable fats known as cocoa butter alternatives. So ये alternatives को we can divide it into three subcategories. So the CBAs are divided into three different categories according to their functionality. ये दोनों चीज़ें बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, functionality and similarity to cocoa butter. Because अगर आपका alternative जो आप डाल रहे हो अपनी चॉकलेट में, if that is not functionally the same, ठीक है, and if it doesn't have the same chemistry, then it is not, the chocolate is not going to behave like a good chocolate, okay? The characteristics will be different, melting point, etc. So these alternatives can be divided into cocoa butter substitutes, cocoa butter replacers, and cocoa butter equivalents. So our company, the one we are analyzing, Manorama Industries plays in this category right here, which is cocoa butter equivalents. So now we'll compare, relative to cocoa butter, which is in this column right here, in this red column, relative to cocoa butter, how these three commodities have performed. So we look at, origin क्या है, ठीक है. So this is comes from palm oil, coconut oil, and just to be, clear, all these things, this, all these are vegetable fats. So first of all, we'll straight away go to main triglycerides, or let's say we'll start with main fatty acids. So we know that cocoa butter, it is made up of its main composition is made up of three fatty acids. First is palmitic, second is stearic, and third is oleic. So we can look at here कि cocoa butter is made up of these three fatty acids. When we look at cocoa butter substitute का क्या मतलब है कि boss, you take out the cocoa butter and you put some other vegetable fat in the chocolate. So the fatty acids are completely different, and if fatty acids are completely different, they're going to have different melting points. In cocoa butter replacer, there are some similar fatty acids, ठीक है, but in cocoa butter equivalents, it is it has all the fatty acids that there are in natural cocoa butter like palmitic, stearic, and oleic. So now we know fatty acids, they come together and they attach to a glycerol backbone and they form triglycerides. So when you look at cocoa butter substitutes, you can look, cocoa butter, natural cocoa butter में the three main triglyceride or tags for short form are POS, SOS, and POP. When we look at substitutes, the triglycerides are completely different. We read ki, triglycerides, they come together and they form crystals, and all these things, they give the cocoa butter, the its chemical and physical properties. तो यहाँ तो ट्राइग्लिसराइड्स ही सब्स्टिट्यूट में और डिफरेंट है. कोको बटर रिप्लेसर में भी डिफरेंट है. द सिर्फ कोको बटर इक्विवेलेंट में ही ट्राइग्लिसराइड्स सिमिलर हैं, सबसे ज़्यादा सिमिलर हैं. If we look at physical and chemical properties, so similar, so we'll start from here. So substitute chemically different to cocoa butter because we know कि इसमें तो fatty acids are different, so it's chemically different with some physical similarities. रिप्लेसर में अगर हम पढ़ें तो द डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ फैटी एसिड इज सिमिलर टू कोको बटर बट द स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ ट्राइग्लिसराइड्स इज completely different. We look कि cocoa butter में the three primary triglycerides are POS, SOS and POP, but replacer में it is PEE, SEE, etc. When it comes to cocoa butter equivalent, similar in their physical and chemical properties like melting profile, similar to what cocoa butter, and and it is also polymorphic in nature. It can have different forms. Mixing properties. So, substitute suitable only to substitute 100% substitute cocoa butter to 100%. Only in small ratios can mix. Okay, so this is like a batter. This is not. This doesn't work. Now, we see कि this doesn't work. So now we'll go to compatibility to CB. So we कि substitute is it's not compatible. Uh, Replacer it is only compatible in small ratios, and equivalent it is compatible. Like this is fine. This product is good. So I have sourced this information from this source right here. You can go and you can read it further if you want. So now we look at chemical properties of CBE. So CBEs are edible fats with tags, composition similar to natural cocoa butter. Therefore, CBEs blend with cocoa butter without altering its physical properties. So, due to high cost and fluctuations in the supply and demand of natural cocoa butter, we saw that the price, for 40 years, good 40 years, it was trading, in some range like $3,000, like, upper bound, and now, like Jan से April के बीच में in a what period of 4 months it went up 250%. So cocoa butter equivalent CBEs are used as an alternative to cocoa butter in the manufacturing of chocolate products because they are prepared from low cost sustainable is the keyword here, sustainable vegetable fats and oils including palm oil. So let's look at this table number one. So what is this table? Fatty acid percentage among different fats in comparison to cocoa butter. So on the right hand side, cocoa butter यहाँ red में है. So we know कि cocoa butter में क्या तीन सबसे ज़्यादा fatty acid we see. So all these similar vegetable fats like mango seed, kernel fat, shea butter, sal fat, etc. All these have these three fatty acids, these main three fatty acids, in similar amounts. I'm not saying exactly same hai, but the whole point of CBE is to use these different types of fatty vegetable fats that have similar chemistry to natural cocoa butter, इनको different weight ratios में use करना, and to form a product like which is cocoa butter equivalent, which is very similar to natural cocoa butter. Obviously there 100% तो same हो ही नहीं सकता, but very close to it, very similar to it. So we can see कि fatty acid composition cocoa butter के comparison में it is similar in these fatty acids. ट्राइग्लिसराइड कॉम्पोजिशन, तो फैटी एसिड्स आपका टैग्स बनाएंगे, ठीक है. सो टैग्स भी सिमिलर है, सो देर गोइंग टू सो द कंपनी इज गोइंग टू यूज डिफरेंट वेट्स ऑफ दीज सिमिलर वेजिटेबल फैट्स एंड मेल्टिंग पॉइंट इज आल्सो सिमिलर. So from a functional standpoint, the replacement of cocoa butter with CBE requires the following characteristics. What this means is कि the CBE that is being produced, ठीक है, from these similar vegetable fats, it needs to have same melting range, similar fatty acids and tag composition, same polymorphic form which we want. We want the type 5, ideally we want the type 5 form, that the crystals take good flavor and good stability with no change in the processing line and shelf life of the product. So in this image, we can see, the cocoa butter is on the left and the equivalent is on the right. This data, by the way, is taken from this resource right here. You can go and you can check it out. So now we look at, exploring studies regarding CB and CBE. Okay, so we're going to look at a couple of research papers, scientific research, that people have done and what they found. But before we go here, I want to tell you, ki, what's the regulation? What is the government regulation around these CBEs? So we'll go to this website. So this is an official website of the European Union. So foreign fats in chocolate. So the chocolate directive allows the addition of up to 5% of vegetable fats other than cocoa butter. The so-called cocoa butter equivalent CBEs in chocolate. If CBEs are added, consumers have to be informed by appropriate. मतलब you can only put 5% तक CBE in your chocolate and call it a chocolate basically. And if these CBEs are added, so you put them on the label, पीछे जो होता है wrapper के. Now, why, my guess, why this regulation is this way. See, regulations take long time to, change, Price cocoa ka, last 40 years, say, it was trading in this range. So there was no real issue, naturally, supply and demand, there thoda fluctuations say in supply and demand, and उसकी वजह से there was some fluctuation, but not like this what we have seen this year. So that is why I guess there was no real need to change the regulation, because the natural uh, cocoa butter was available in so much supply. But now the picture has changed. There has been a supply disruption here, and the price has went, you know, to the moon basically. So now we look at these research studies. So what are they doing in these research studies? What experiments they have done is कि they have taken different blends, ठीक है, of cocoa butter and cocoa butter equivalent. They have tested it basically to see कि how big of a difference comes to chocolates as we increase the percentage amount of CBE that is put in chocolate. So regulation says कि you can only put 5% of CBE in chocolates. But we'll see what these studies have to say. So this first study. So you can view the study, by clicking on this link right here. I've just, this is not the full study. I've just extracted the part that I, found to be, the most relevant. This is a big, this is a big study. You can read it. So now what they're doing here is they're preparing CBE by using palm stearin and shea butter. This study was done in 2021. So the aim of the study was to create CBEs to improve chocolate tempering. The resulting CBEs could be mixed with cocoa butter in chocolate production without significantly changing its hardness or melting behavior, thus preserving the quality of chocolate by using a cost-effective fat source. So now, how did they, do this? So blend of palm stearin. Palm stearin is basically, they get this from palm oil, and shea stearin. They get this from the shea butter, which is extracted from shea nuts. Is a suitable option for preparing cocoa butter equivalents, the CBEs. So, among different ratios tested, the 40-60 blend of palm stearin to shea butter exhibited melting and crystallization profiles most comparable to cocoa butter. Which, what do they mean by this? कि, उन्होंने different weights पे, mix किया palm oil को and shea butter को, palm stearin and shea stearin को, and what they found is कि जो 40-60 blend है जिसमें 40% palm stearin है and 60% shea stearin है, that exhibited the behavior which was most similar to natural cocoa butter. So 40% palm stearin, 60% shea stearin. They examined how different now जब उनको they chose कि okay this CB is good. So now they examined how different weight ratios of cocoa butter and cocoa butter equivalent CBEs in chocolate affect the chocolate's melting and crystallization properties. They tested ratios ranging from 95% to 5%. So 95% to 5% to 10% cocoa butter to 90% CBE. So what this means is that they started from this blend right here. जिसमें उन्होंने 95% कोको बटर यूज़ किया एंड 5% इक्विवेलेंट यूज़ किया. सो द रेगुलेशन इज दिस ब्लेंड इज बेस्ड ऑन द रेगुलेशन विच सेज कि आप सिर्फ 5% तक ही CBE पुट कर सकते हो इन योर चॉकलेट. So they use this and they went all the way to 10% natural cocoa butter and 90% of CBE, and then they compared it using and were compared as a function of temperature. So what they did is ki, they took these different blends. They took natural cocoa butter and then they melted it. कि this is basically a solid fat content chart, and जैसे जैसे यहाँ पे these guys are increasing the temperature, they are seeing कि how all these different blends, ठीक है, of CB and CBE relative to natural cocoa butter, how is their melting behavior. So a SFC versus them plot gives not only the information on how hard or soft a fat is at different temperatures, but also the melting behavior of the fat. So इस पिक्चर को और बड़ा करते हैं. So I'm going to the study. I'm opening this image right here. So what are we seeing here? So there is this plot here, which is the A1 and the B1, this B plot. So इस plot में this white square, this is the natural cocoa butter, and then there are these 1 2 3 4 5 different blends, ठीक है, ranging from 95% cocoa butter, 5% cocoa butter equivalent to all the way to 60% cocoa butter and 40% cocoa butter equivalent. And इसमें again this white boxes, this line here, यहाँ पे it's from 50-50 all the way to 10-90. So they are seeing how it's melting. So you can see in these blends it is very close, almost like I say बहुत ही minute differences है melting behavior में. But जैसे ही हम 50% से 50% 40% से ज़्यादा CBE डाल देते हैं, then there are differences. Obviously CBEs are very similar to cocoa butter, the natural cocoa butter, but it is not exactly the same. It cannot be exactly the same, but it is very similar. So now what this study concluded. So blends with up to 40% CBE kept similar melting and solidifying features as pure cocoa butter. But when more CBE was added, changes were seen on how they melted and solidified. It suggests that keeping CBE under 40% can maintain cocoa butter qualities. So regulation says कि you can only put 5% of CBE in chocolate, but according to this study you can put up to 40% of CBE and still there are similar melting and similar melting behaviors, similar physical characteristics, etc. So the second study, so this study was done in 2023 right here, and these guys they used this Bumbagan kernel fat. So this is the fruit basically. I'm going to use its short form, which is BKF, and palm oil to formulate cocoa butter equivalent. So now what these guys did, so they also did the same thing. They are doing this solid fat content. Okay, so they are using different blends of these CB and CBE, and then they are testing it, how it is melting relative to natural cocoa butter, pure cocoa butter. So different blend ratios ranging from 90-70% of BKF and palm oil, you know, were tested to find cocoa butter equivalent. So they are using this bungun kernel fat stearin and palm oil, and they are making CBE. So what they arrived was the best blend was the B5 blend, and which consisted of 70% BKF and 30% palm oil. 70% फैट जो इस फ्रूट से आया एंड 30% palm oil से जो आया demonstrated properties most similar to cocoa butter, suggesting it could be used to prepare cocoa butter equivalent, the CBE. So now what this study concluded was the B9 blend. So for reference here, the B10 blend is 100% cocoa butter. So you can just, open this and read it if you want. This whole study. There's a lot of data here. So I've extracted, whatever I felt was the most important. So, this dot, this black dot, this is the B10, which is the natural cocoa butter. So what these guys, the conclusion of the study was the B9 blend with 20% CBE and 80% cocoa butter is designed to closely match CBE's properties. It maintains a similar texture, melting behavior, crystal structure to cocoa butter, offering a smooth, creamy feel. So what these guys are basically saying ki 20% tak you can put the CBE in and it closely matches natural CBE's properties. Regulation is saying ki 5% tak ki we can put in, but this study concluded ki 20% tak you can put you can put in the CBE, and it is going to match the properties very similarly, closely. So now the third study, effects of cocoa butter equivalent, on the behavior on dark chocolate. So this study was done in Brazilian Journal of Food Research in 2019. This is again the similar kind of a study. They are using the FSC plot. Again they're checking how CBE is melting. How the different blends are melting. Okay, you can read it if you want. Just click on this link, open it, and you can read it. So this is the study. Now I'll just move to straight away conclusion. So the blend with 20% CBE was the highest concentration that showed no significant changes compared to pure CBE in terms of hardness, melting, peak temperature, solid fat content, polymorphic form. Similarity makes the blend suitable for use in dark chocolate production. Data also just suggests that 20% replacement of CB with CBE in dark chocolate does not alter the microstructure, hardness, or polymorphism when compared to pure CB chocolates. What they are saying is कि you can put 20% of cocoa butter equivalent in chocolate, and it does not alter the microstructure, or any properties, when compared to pure cocoa butter chocolates. The presence of CBE in blends help control fat bloom, which is a common problem in chocolate storage. So now we'll go to, future of cacao, effects of global warming, and how global warming and climate change is affecting this crop. So as we have discussed in the beginning of that cocoa pods are produced in tropical zones around the equator, where climate conditions are well suited for growing cocoa trees. Cocoa trees only prosper under specific conditions, including fairly uniform temperatures, high humidity, abundant rain, nitrogen rich soil, protection from wind. In short, cocoa trees thrive in rainforest. So, now this data is taken from this source right here. You can click on it and this will open. And this is a government website. This is climate.gov. No, and this is what are they saying basically? Let's read it. So this is old, but something is better than nothing. And this is from 2013. It's old, it's very old, 10 years back. So what these guys are trying to show us. So this is the current scenario, and this is the 2050. 2050 ka scenario is on the right. So due to climate change, our planet is getting hotter. This is simple, but rising temperatures alone won't necessarily hurt cacao production. The danger to chocolate comes from an increase in dryness of soil and environment, especially since the high temperatures projected for West Africa by 2050 are unlikely to be accompanied by an increase in rainfall. So, if you look at this current scenario here, ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे ये suitability of cocoa production, this range is given. So this white means it's barely suitable, orange is marginally suitable, yellow is good, light green is very good, dark green is excellent. So you can see ki currently there is like so much region, ठीक है, in this is Ivory Coast, this is Ghana. There is so much region available, जहाँ पे we can have excellent cocoa production. But 2050 में what these guys are saying कि this excellent region is shrinking due to global warming and climate change. Like if you see in 2050 there is just these two portions are left. So, as higher temperatures squeeze more water out of soil and plants, it is unlikely that rainfall will increase enough to offset the moisture loss. So, we'll read key, these maps show sustainability of cacao cultivation at present left में. There is so much good region here to produce and projected 2050. So, rising temperatures will push the suitable cacao cultivation areas uphill. What do we mean by uphill is कि now this area right here is not suitable, so this production will move uphill, it will go ऊपर यहाँ पे. So, yeah, this is what basically they're saying, and this will affect the supply because now this area has to be cleaned, and वहाँ पे they have to start the cultivation and all together. So the point is कि this climate change and global warming is going to affect this crop, and so in order to tackle this, the governments of these countries, Ivory Coast, Ghana, all these Western African countries, they need to form some long-term policies. Some they need to have some technological development, or they need to do something in order to protect this crop, or else the supply will be affected much more severely. So some good policies really needed, some long-term good policy. So now we look at global key competing players overview. So basically we're going to look at the largest chocolate manufacturers, जिनका raw material is cocoa butter and CBE now, and we are going to look at the top manufacturers of CBE. So the 15 largest chocolate manufacturing companies. So top pay there is Mars, Ferrero, Mondelez. These guys make Toblerone, Hershey's, Nestle, etc. etc. There's a whole list, and these are their net sales in billion USD. And then there are some highlights. So I got this data from this link. You can click it and you can you can view this. So now we'll come to top global manufacturers of cocoa butter equivalents. So this slide is not complete, but it's fine. So there is Manorama Industries, and there are other, what is this? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. So I was able to find eight publicly listed companies who were producing cocoa butter equivalents. There might be, some private players or something like that, but publicly I could find these eight companies. Now, interesting thing is Manorama, this is a pure CBE play. अदर कंपनीज, ठीक है, लेट्स से विलमार इंटरनेशनल, ये लोग और भी प्रोडक्ट्स बनाते हैं, लाइक वेजिटेबल ऑयल प्रोड्यूस करेंगे, और एफएमसीजी प्रोडक्ट्स दे विल प्रोड्यूस. द मोस्ट similar company to Manorama is AAKAB, this company right here. They also have some other segments, but this is the closest company to Manorama. All of them, they produce some other products also, but Manorama is the pure CBE play. So this is Manorama's CBE called Milkoa CBE. Yeah. So now we are going to look at last 5 year revenue and margin. How the revenue growth has been. Margin performance कैसा हुआ है among these eight companies, and this data is in million USD. So interesting thing here. So if you look at AKAB, Bunge Global, Wilmar International, Fuji Oil, AKAB had a revenue decline, negative 9%. Same with Bunge, same with Wilmar, same with Fuji. All four of them had revenue decline, like 9, negative 9%, negative 11%. And when it comes to margins, so EBITDA is 12% for AKB, EBIT is 10, uh, your net profit margin is 6%. It's like somewhat increase in margins in in last year. Then Bunge is 664. Wilmar is like a flat margin. Fuji थोड़ा decline हो रहा है इधर margin. ठीक है. Now let's compare other four companies. So here what we see interesting is कि Olam also had a revenue decline. Nissan also had a revenue decline. Meva also had a revenue decline. Negative 24%. Big decline. Manorama Industries, on the other hand, revenue increased 30%. That is really good performance compared to its peers. When it comes to margins, on all three metrics, flat margins, flat margins, flat margins. Manorama had its peak margins at 23%, but now, their EBITDA margin for FI, you know, 2023 Met was 16%. Still the highest when compared to all four peers. Like, Bunch has EBITDA margins of 12%. Manorama Industries has EBITDA margins of 16%, 13% EBIT margins, and what 9% net profit margins. We'll go over Manorama's Q1 results, Q1 F1 FY20 25 results. We'll see how they have performed. So this is it. This is the research report. Now we're going to look at जो फर्स्ट क्वार्टर के रिजल्ट्स है मनोरमा इंडस्ट्रीज के वो कैसे थे. So I have historical financial data of Manorama Industries. ठीक है, and we are also going to look at the con call. So we can see there was 20% revenue growth YOY on a quarterly basis. So we can see right here the EBITDA margin is now at 20%. That, and if you look at pehle, for so many quarters it was what, 15, 17, 15, 16, 17%. Now it's at 20%. That some operating efficiency, economies of scale, operating leverage, everything, they are now they now have a 20% EBITDA margins. EBIT margins have increased. Okay. One of the things that you need to note ki the company has debt. If you look at their balance sheet, their debt has increased. So because they have to do capacity expansion, they need to put more capacity, or taki they can produce CBE. So they need debt to uh, expand. And also this business, it's a working capital intensive business. So one thing you need to understand is key, all these raw materials, these shea nuts, or whatever these sal nuts and all. So these are essentially crops only. So they have a proper harvest season, like January, May, you put the seeds in the ground, and let's say 6 months baad, the crop grows, and it's not like, every week, or whenever you want, you go there and you'll get the crop. So they have a proper cycle. So what these guys do is, कि एक बारी में they need to take the delivery of all these raw materials, and then these guys need to store it in like proper storage facilities, like warehouses which have, I don't know, air conditioning, or something to keep these crops from spoiling basically. So, I was, building a DCF model for Manorama. So it's incomplete. It's still incomplete. I still have to build it. हो जाएगा. But yeah, I still have to, build this DCF model. But we'll, go to the con call. So, I read the con call, and these were the most, interesting things that, I took a screenshot, and, I just copied it here. So let's go through the con call. So they have upgraded their guidance to INR 750 crores plus for fiscal year 2025, with an increase in profitability due to economies of scale, margin improvement, and multiple other efficiencies which they are achieving. In another interesting thing, so guidance दे दिया है 750 crores INR for FY25. So then they're saying ki because of rising surge in demand for their product, they are now selling at 10-15% higher prices like compared to last year. Then they have said ki, so we expect our margins to be sustainable. As you have seen, we have reported 20% EBITDA margins this quarter, attributed to our significant cost efficient management system and the efficiency. So the company will try to maintain this margin in the range 20 to 22% in coming financial year, and it could, of course, can surpass more. Okay, but further guidance they will give in coming quarters. The cost of borrowing is 9%. The and the clear intention of Manorama is to be debt free, and they also have a target to be debt free in like a couple of years. We already have INR 95 crores of fixed deposits in the bank, and our plan is to be debt free in the next 3 to 4 years. So yeah, the company also plans to be debt free. This is going to be really good for the company. Now let's look at some key metrics. So yeah, so we can see here, the debt has increased. Okay, these are some key metrics that I've plotted here. So this is it. Let's just look at the chart of Manorama. Yeah. So this is on BSC. So you can see, it has had a strong up move. It's in an uptrend. So if the company, performs well, and because there are a lot of tailwinds for the company, if they perform well, if they, increase their margins, increase their revenue growth, etc. So and reduce their debt. So there is a good chance, that this stock can perform very well in the future. But let's see, coming quarters में क्या होता है, and we'll see. So yeah, this is it. And if you want, if you need this research report or these Excel files, you can just message me on LinkedIn. And yeah, this is it for now. And please let me know, what you think of this company, in comments, or you can probably message me on LinkedIn. And yeah, so this is it. So like the video if if you found this to be useful in any way. So yeah.